everyone, I just want to be clear that whilst I try to get this for 45 minutes, I can guarantee you this one won't be.
Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of So What's New in the Biscuit Tin. I'm Jess.
And I'm Sam.
And this is episode 3, and today we've got a very, very exciting guest. Yvette, who you may know as Blossom Sandwich, or you may know her fabulous app shared with her husband, Stash Hub, is here to talk to us today, and we're going to be talking all about fabric stashes, particularly timely at this time of year. We may have added to our stashes in the New Year's sale. You may have had a little D-stash like I have, but we're really, really excited to talk about all things fabric. So welcome to the podcast, Yvette.
Hello, Jess and Sam. It's so exciting to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
That's very nice to have a guest. We're just talking to each other for a couple of episodes, haven't we, Jess?
Oh yeah, we can't be stopped. So it's really, really good that we have a third person. We're so excited.
I was really worried you were going to say, "Oh, we've just been talking to each other and we're already sick of each other." And I was like, "Oh gosh, guys, it's episode 3. Come on,
yeah,
we can guarantee you." Don't worry, we've not exhausted the chat yet.
No such thing.
I think we're a long way away from that.
So Sam, crucial question. What biscuit are you today?
Wow, Jess. As a non-tea drinker, I still understand what it's like if you dip a biscuit. And you know, there's the bits left at the bottom of your cup of tea when you've dipped a biscuit. I feel like the bits at the bottom of a cup of tea. And I think that rich tea are quite easy biscuits to crumble in a cup of tea. So I'm probably a partially dunked rich tea today. That's how
if that isn't a vibe, I don't know what is. Oh my god. Yvette, what would you say you are?
Well, because I listened to your first episode, I thought you probably were going to ask me this. So I asked Doug and he said ginger nut. And I thought that's probably like a bit of a boring and obvious answer because I'm a redhead. But he was like, no, it's because they're kind of like spicy and like fiery. And I was like, yeah, okay. But I was thinking like a chocolate hobnob because they're like a little bit salty, but they've got the chocolate there, that like hit that you need. So that's what I'm going for.
You can take that next level with the salted caramel chocolate hobnob. Have you had one of those?
Well, no, I'm not a fan of the salted caramel hobnob because I think the caramel's too chewy and it takes away from the crunch.
Yeah, I do
so
know
you
what
want
you
the
mean.
crunch. You've got the crunch, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm the crunch. I'm like there. I'm ready to go. Like I'm not being softened with a chewy caramel. I won't have it.
I agree with that. If you want a biscuit, you want a biscuit. You don't want like, basically gum. No one needs that. I think I'm shortbread because I'm incredibly hormonal and it's the only ingredients I have in the house and that's what I will be baking later. So I'm just sort of, I don't know, I'm in the mood to eat very like when you've put shortbread in the oven and then take it out and it's still warm. That's where I am at the moment, where I'm just like, it's so cold in the house as well. I just want warm shortbread.
You could crumble to dust at any time as well.
Yes, exactly. I am incredibly fragile.
Easy to overcook as well. Yeah.
It's all coming together, guys.
It can all go wrong at any minute when you cook a shortbread, can't it?
Listeners, please pray for my sanity. But we are getting there, and we're so excited for today. Before we really dive in, what's everyone got on their sewing table?
Yvette, would you like to go first, or would you start?
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm working on the Danny trousers. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I'm obsessed with the Danny trousers. They're like my go-tos. I've made like probably about 4 pairs. But I'm making a pair in this, it's called Antique Gold, the colorway. So it's kind of like a kind of camely brown, goldy color, Ventana twill. And it's like, it's my second pair of Danny trousers in that same fabric. So I know I'm onto a winner. So I think it's going to be good. I just need to like do the hem and do like sew the buttons on. So I'm kind of hoping I'll finish it today, but also like I don't want to like rush it and then mess it up at the last stage because I did have to do the zip fly like 3 times. So I just want to like go smooth.
You want to get it done? Smooth sailing. Who's the pattern by? Just in case anyone wants to.
It's the True Bias Danny pants. So they're like they're like not overly fitted, but they're not like wide legged. They're kind of a casual trouser with pockets, and then they've got elastic in the back, and then a zip fly flat front. So
Nice.
yeah, it's like my go-to, my number one trouser pattern. So
I might have to give those a go. I'm desperate search for work from home.
I was going to say the same as well, because obviously my Mate 9 this year, I've chosen techniques for my Mate 9. And being a zip fly is one of those. So maybe the Danny pants might be a good one to give a go to work on that one. So.
Yeah. Well, there's I did do a YouTube video and a blog on Sew Me Sunshine about my first pair. So if you want to just look at loads and loads of pictures of my crotch and bum, you're welcome to.
What is on your sewing table, Sal?
Well, I'm still working on this sort of idea that you and I are working on the working from home.
Yes.
So lots of snugglies, lots of sort of sweatshirting, stretchy fabric. The problem is, once I start on something, I have multiple things on the go at once. There's not one thing. So I'm looking at jumper dresses, so extending patterns. I'm looking at using ponte for trousers. So I batch cut. So I'm in the middle of batch cutting some things at the moment. And where I've not got enough of one fabric, I'm looking at how to colour block with another fabric to get the fabric out of the pattern I want as well. So.
You're so good for stuff like that. Like for colour blocking and things, and being like, I'll find extra fabric. Like, I don't know how she does it, Yvette, honestly. Like,
it's a good way to like stop fabric from like clogging up your stash as well, because if you're like, oh, I could make this, but I have slightly not enough, whereas Sam's like, nope, I'm doing it. I'm doing the plan.
Someone said to me something. I was talking about adding like details to like patterns and things, because although there's lots of amazing patterns out there, mostly we're expecting the fabric to do the work. And I thought it was a really interesting way for someone to put it. And what I'm trying to do is look, even when I'm sewing a pattern that I like, how can I make a bit of extra detail in it? So whether that is through accidentally needing to with an extra bit of fabric, or just putting an extra pin tuck in, or a fold, or a dart, just to keep pushing the boundaries, really. And the trouble is, then my brain just goes, oh, I could try this, or I could try this, and then I have to like rein it in a bit. So my planning of like my sewing projects is not very detailed, because I have to scrawl all these ideas down to get them out of my head, because otherwise at 2:00 in the morning, that's what I'm laying there thinking about. So
I wish that's what I was thinking about at 2:00 in the morning. I wish. But I do think it is really interesting, because I think this leads really nicely into the main topic, actually, of the day. But I think when you sort of curate your stash versus buy loads of fabric, it sort of almost decides what you can make. We were talking about this last night. I have very little jersey in the house, because there's very few jersey fabrics I like. But that then means there's this whole world of patterns I just don't really sew, because I never have the fabric for them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm similar in that I don't have a lot of jersey, but I think that's because I don't really like sewing with jersey, so I just don't buy it, because I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever get around to like making loads of t-shirts or whatever.
Right, no, I'm with you there. Like, I'll sew. So recently I was sewing with a couple of like rib knits I had in my stash. I don't know, I'm different with them, because I'm like, oh, they're sort of cozy and I can make a cardigan or whatever. But yeah, I don't know, just like plain jersey, I'm like, I just don't really make anything that you would make in jersey either. But I don't know if that's just because I'm missing out on some like fantastic patterns or something.
You are both missing out. I spend all my time when I'm sewing a woven pattern going, could I make this in jersey? That's what I'm always thinking, because actually you don't have to fuss over the fitting so much, which I like, first of all. So it's a great way of making something that fits easier. You don't have to worry about zips and buttons, because most of it will stretch and go over your head. And also there is, once you start looking, there's a lot of great choice. But you're right, it's not what we're mostly presented with. We're mostly presented with gorgeous wovens to choose from. But once you fall down a hole of finding it, it's almost unstoppable. And sewing up a project is a lot quicker as well. If you sew most of it on your overlocker. We talked about this in the Sewing Mojo one, that if you're looking for like a win, like a success to feel good, jersey's a great one, because you're very unlikely to be disappointed in the fit of it as well.
That is true. One thing I would say, though, I don't know if this is a controversial opinion, I feel like a lot of jersey fabric is very childish. And I find it really hard to find like a nice sophisticated jersey. that I could wear to work. Like, and that's totally fine if that's what you're into and you love like your sort of cartoon patterns and stuff, crack on, that's fine. But if you're trying to make a wardrobe that's sort of workwear and like that you could sort of do multiple things, and I find it quite challenging to find fabrics I'd be happy to work with.
I really like the art gallery jerseys because I love a floral, but they're so expensive. And then where I don't sew a lot of jersey, I'm not that confident on it. So I'm like, don't really want to spend like £20+ a meter and mess up a neckline or something.
No, 100% with you there. I am constantly on the search for a really good, thick, black ribbed jersey. Like a thin rib, but a thick, so it's not see-through when you pull it.
Warm. Yeah.
Because I've got so many ready-to-wear dresses in that fabric, and I love it. And I know if I could find it, I'd make a million things in it. But I'm still on the hunt, guys. So
I think, yeah, and I think what you say, Jess, is we see the child ones because that's what they often promote as well.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to sort of know some of the stockists and dive a bit deeper. But I think, you know, they're definitely out there. But I think one of the scariest things about buying jersey, because when I started, is the quality is so much more variable when you buy it online.
Yeah.
Because even if you look at the weight, when it comes, when it stretches, it might go white if it's got like a print, or it's white on the back. Even I bought a jersey from Minerva, who you would think, you know, you've got a slightly more guaranteed quality, and it was a Minerva brand one. And when he stretched it, it still went white. So I do think it is a fabric that I prefer to buy in person because you get the quality then. I do think there's some really nice patterns out there, but not everyone stocks them. So you do have to go more on like a hunt to find it. But once you find it, and I think that's when we talk about stashes, isn't it? Because if I waited till I wanted it, would I have it?
Well, that's the thing. So 2 things there. One thing I was going to say is, Sam, because you buy more jersey than both of us, if you have recommendations, can you put them in the show notes so that if anyone is listening to this and going, oh my God, actually, do you know what? I need to buy more, but I don't know where to go. Stick in the show notes.
I'm more than happy to shop vicariously to everyone else.
Thank you. But also, I want to know, and pivot at this point, Yvette, Stash Hub obviously is the saviour of all sewists, but how did it sort of come about? What led you to go, was it you need this and you thought everyone else would, or?
Yeah, basically. So if you haven't heard of Stash Hub, firstly, like, you got to follow me, guys. Like, come on.
Follow her. Fantastic sewing memes. Like, honestly, rolling, I love it.
But yeah, so Stash Hub is an app for Apple, Android, and on the web if you want to use it on your computer. So you can basically catalog all of your fabric, all your patterns, plan your projects, and like a bunch of other stuff as well. And yeah, initially it started out because my husband Doug is like a self-taught app developer. And in a similar way to sewing, when he was learning, he was like, I want a project to work on rather than just like doing tutorials and like little bits. It's like, you know, if you wanted to learn to sew, you probably do better like making a dress rather than just putting in loads and loads of zips. I think you'd get really bored. So he wanted a project, and I was faffing about with Trello at the time, which does work and it can be really good, but you have to set it up yourself to start with and make it work for you. And so I was doing that, and he was a bit like, you know, this isn't what Trello is like designed for. It's like a sort of business tool, really. And he was like, so I think it was his idea. He thinks I asked him to do it, but I think he offered. But anyway, it's been a joint project from the beginning. So he was like, I'll make you an app to catalog your stash. And then he made the first iteration of Stash Hub, and I was like, dude, this is really good. And I think a lot of people in the sewing community could benefit from this, because I feel like stashes is like a big theme of like conversation and, you know, thought in the sewing community. And I was like, I really think there's a place for this, because before we made it, Doug was like, oh, let's have a look and see what's out there. And there wasn't really,
there was nothing really. That's as intuitive. I think with sewing, you're always finding software and adopting it to sewing, whereas Stash Hub is uniquely, I think, really focused on sewists, which is fantastic. I'm a web version girly myself, and I love it. It's brilliant, and I love the magic ad. as well. You just put the link in, and it just, because I'm lazy, I'm really bad at adding details. So love the magic ads.
But yeah, that's
and now you can do challenges on it as well, can't you? Some of the sewing challenges.
Yeah. So that's been there for a while, but then I got a bit lax of like adding new challenges, and then there was the sort of, I think in December there wasn't too much going on because everyone's doing their Vlogmas and their other things. Yeah. So I haven't added the challenges for a while, but now it's January again. There's loads of challenges. So I've done a blog post which maybe you can put in the show notes, and but yeah, each month I'll update what challenges. So if anyone's hosting a challenge and wants more people to know about it as well, just get in touch.
I mean, yes, listeners, please do that. Also, Yvette, please, can I put So Yellow Ferrando on there for March? Thank you.
Oh, do you want to? I know the listeners can't see, but do you want to have a quick peek at my So Yellow Ferrando fabric?
Of course I do.
Well, I'm going to do like a description. Are you ready, Jess?
Yes, I'm so ready.
So I would say it's a watercolour floral theme with a lot of violets, yellows and oranges, almost like the colour of a sunset put into a watercolour floral. What do you reckon?
The most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
It's lovely. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Please tell me that's going to be worn to the So Yellow Ferrando in-person event.
That's the plan.
The venue. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm planning to make the by hand London Anna dress, like the floor length one, and so that's why I'm really happy that you're doing an event. I was like, I need somewhere to wear this.
To actually wear it. I'm gonna have to up again. But we love Stash Up, and one of my favourite things this year, and I think sparked some conversation in a good way, was Stash Up Wrapped. I loved it. I thought it was really cool. So I had a couple of questions for you about it, because I'm being all super nerdy about this right now. Can you see all the data as one?
So what we did for the Wrapped is Doug can run like a script to extract the information, like for each person. So in the Stash Hub Wrapped, there was a total of how much you bought. So in the code, Doug wrote like for this user, all the fabrics with the dates between this and this, and then it would put out a number. But yeah, we don't sort of have a look in everyone's stash to like what you've got.
Oh my God, that would be like so worrying for me. But no, I more meant like, can you see overall just all users have bought like 17,000 meters of fabric or whatever this year?
Yeah, so last year I did a few. It was a weekly feature, but then I kind of didn't do it for a bit. But basically, to get any of this data, Doug has to like run a bit of a script to extract that data from the database. But we did like things like the total meterage of fabric that's been saved, which is probably a lot bigger now, but at the time it was like enough to go up and down Everest 6 times. So I don't know what it is now. And like what everyone's favorite fabric type was and things like that. So yeah, maybe if you're interested in the big data, give me your suggestions of what stats you want, and I'll see what Doug can pull out.
Anything like that would. Yeah, I mean, Jess and I were thinking that a bit like Google can identify trends by the searches that people are using, because I love data, and Google knows when the flu is coming before it arrives, because it knows when people are searching for remedies, etc. And I was thinking, you are probably the only people in the UK that could probably have the closest connection to fabric buying trends.
Yeah, I think what would be really interesting to like look into is like what people buy versus what they sew.
Yeah,
because I think for sewists as well, you don't want to buy loads of stuff that you're never going to make. And also for shops, I think is good as well, because obviously making a sale is good, but also you kind of started that shop to like bring joy to people and like for them to make stuff. So I think that would be really good to have that info and see. But yeah, I'm really interested.
I think that would be really useful, because I know it's something that people have interacted with me a lot with since I did my confessions vlog earlier in 2023, where I showed everybody the mess of my stash. And a lot of people saying I felt seen and all these things, and and thank you for sharing that, because it made me feel better. But I do think that so many of us actually want to use what we buy, but if we realise that but we are buying things that we won't use because we're doing that thing you do when you shop, where you buy what makes you feel good and then you regret it. I think it would really help people to realise you bought a lot of biscuits, but actually you made a lot of cotton or something. I think it would really help people.
Well, also, if there's a trend in what you're not sewing. So I was listening to another podcast recently where there was a woman who's like she's like a style blogger on Instagram, and she does wardrobe audits with people. I cannot for the life of me remember her name, but I'll go look her up and put her in the show notes because she's worth a follow. Effortlessly stylish. Like, I will never be that stylish in the entirety of my life. It just won't happen. But I was listening to her talking about doing wardrobe audits, and she said it's really important to look through your discarded pile and look at fabric compositions or brands, or like if there's something that crops up again and again. And for sewists, it might be you're always buying this type of fabric, but actually, like for me, I don't buy linen. Linen's very pretty, but it's really itchy. I can't wear it. And every now and then I go, oh my God, that's so beautiful. And then I go, no, it's linen, bad. You can't have it. And you're not spending 17 quid a meter on it.
And I think it's empowering to like know that information as well, because then you know that you can make decisions that you'll be like happy with like longer down the line. And like, so you were talking about the wardrobe audit. I would love to do like stash audits with people. I don't know if like anyone would ever be up for it, but I think like sometimes you maybe just need like another person to just like be there for you, and because it can be quite an emotional process, especially like if you decide you need to destash stuff, but like choosing what goes and like having to let go of it, I think you can become quite attached to things.
My goodness, and because I was thinking, you often see these funny quotes that say fabric shopping is a different hobby to sewing, you know, and I know people say it like as a fun thing, but actually you're right. Maybe some of the fabrics people have in their stash, they will never sew because they hold a memory, and maybe something else should happen with them, and they need help sometimes to work out what that is and how to move on, or whether they're going to move on. And actually, should we store that bit of our stash somewhere else because it's a memory stash as opposed to actually use it version, you know?
That's a good point. I do wonder, because I did a destash over Christmas, because the Sojo had flown, it had just gone. And part of that's because the sewing room was too messy. And I was really struggling to be in there. And I felt I had too much fabric. So I went through everything. I think comparatively, I have a very small stash. Like, I think I have like, maybe 20, 25 fabrics, probably, something like that, which isn't, you know, some of which are like remnants. But what I didn't realise is I had a lot of very big fabrics. I have loads of wool. And like, coating and stuff that physically takes up lots of space, but also isn't necessarily transferable between projects. I bought one of those fabrics to make a coat. The Alex coat didn't fit out of it. I'm not making another coat. I've used enough fabric in my stash, so I destashed it. And I was sad to see it go. But it's one of the resolutions I've made this year. So I'm not allowed to buy a fabric if I only have one plan for it.
I think that's really smart. I've never heard anyone else doing that as well, but it's what you're doing is you're choosing fabric that inspires you, not just choosing one project.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm a bit finicky in that way. Like, I might change my mind. Whereas if I look at a fabric and go, oh, I could make trousers out of that, I could make a dress, I could make 2 tops. Either way, that fabric is going to have a place in my wardrobe.
And I've gotten really into the idea recently of like anything you don't want is clutter, and physical clutter is also like mental clutter. So if you've got so much stuff and you don't want to use it, or you're not feeling inspired by it, that's going to block your creativity. So I don't know, I've just really got into this like idea at the moment where I want to use like the Stash Hub platform to like inspire people to create a stash that works for them. And that's not about having the right amount of fabric, because that doesn't exist. That's different for everyone. And like your storage, like it doesn't have to like look like a Pinterest picture. Like it just has to be practical. Like your stuff has to be accessible. You have to be able to browse it. So I've just got really like into this idea of like having a setup that isn't in the way, and that's inspiring your creativity, because all of the stuff is stuff that you want, and that gives you ideas rather than you just have because you don't know what to do with it.
Oh,
Definitely.
100%. I love
we
that.
we talked about that. I think it was on the Sewing Mojo one, a last episode. Yes, we talked about like the guilt that can be attached to some things if you don't clear them. But I've actually given away some of the sewing projects I've sewn that I know I'm never going to wear, because otherwise they were just taunting me and hovering over me. And actually, I need to let them go and fulfill their destiny with someone else.
Or
Because
stop
otherwise,
weighing you down as well, because it's hard to be creative when you feel bad about something not working.
And I think that's definitely a question people have asked, isn't it, Yvette? Is how much is like a good stash? And I think you're right. It's not about how much you've got. It's about what you've got. And does it make you feel creative, or is it bogging you down?
I think it's quite interesting as well when you talk about sort of the guilt of either projects made, or when something's very popular and maybe you buy it because it's popular, whether that is a fabric or a pattern or both, and then you might get it home and realize, oh no, this doesn't work for me at all, but I've got it now. And there's that added pressure, I think, sometimes to like it.
Like pass things on to someone directly who you know definitely wants it, I think is really good. Like, and it's really good that like destashing is available as an option, because you don't have that guilt. Like, if anything, you've got a good feeling because now someone else gets to have it.
Yeah, you know it's going to get used, because there's nothing worse than going, this has gone to waste. Whereas actually seeing it go off to having, I love it. I don't know if you guys get this. If you destash and someone tags you in what they've made from your destash, you're like, hooray, look at it, it's living, it's there. And that's a great feeling, I think.
I see that through the socials that I do, where someone else picks something up off the swaps table. People get really excited knowing that someone else will use it. And I do encourage people to share a picture, because people love seeing what someone made with the fabric that they just couldn't use.
So speaking of though, sorry, I was going to say your fabric swap is coming up, Yvette.
Yeah, so it's on the 20th of January. So I don't know how that's going to line up.
I think it will have happened by the time everyone hears this lovely interview.
I'm going to say it was amazing. It was really good, and everyone had a great time.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask about that as well is, in terms of the sort of the response when you first put it out there, was everyone like, hooray, a chance to like, was everyone very enthusiastic about getting involved?
Yeah, I think it's really good to have like an in-person swap as well, because then you can actually see the fabric, and so then when people take it, you know they actually like it as well, like rather than you posting something and being like, oh, I don't know, like what if they receive it and then it's not quite what they thought it was, and it's like an extra layer of stress. And also if you've got quite a few things that you want to rehome, it's like you don't have to post it all, you don't have to do all the admin, you literally just go up with your basket of stuff. And we're also using the event to like support sort of community sewing projects as well. So if anyone's like ever hosted a swap or been to one before, you'll know that there's often like quite a bit left at the end, because people will come with the view to get rid of stuff rather than the view to take lots of stuff, which is good, fine, but it means that then the organizers have stuff to deal with. So we have partnered with a few community projects and said, look, you know, you can come at the end, take anything you want. And
that's
then
brilliant.
I'm co-hosting it with Sarah, who runs Olive Road London, and he's going to take lots of stuff to the Big C, which is a kind of charity shop, but they sell like craft things.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that's really good. And we've just confirmed like a recycling option as well. So if anyone brings small scraps, that's definitely going to get like recycled into like car stuffing and that sort of thing. So we're quite confident about like rehoming everything, whether or not people take it at the swap, it's going to go to a good home. So that's really exciting,
because I think it's such a lovely way, as you say, you get to look at it in person, you get to see your fabrics have a new life, and the more people know, the more chance there'll be that fabric that you wanted and missed out on, or you know, like it's such a wonderful thing to do. And I think really cool, I think post-COVID we're really seeing so much more of a community for this kind of sewing stuff.
Yeah, like I don't think I would be sewing now if it wasn't for the sewing community online. Like, because I started sewing in like, well, 2020 is when I started my dressmaking journey. I got my machine in 2019, and I was listening to the Love to Sew podcast by the Blackbird Fabrics Helen's
Helen and I can't think of
Helen and Caroline. Sorry,
yeah.
It's like a different podcast. Anyway, that's what I was listening to right at the start, and they did an episode about the sewing community and like who to follow on Instagram and what Instagram hashtags were and stuff. So I was like, okay, cool, give it a go. And then I just got really into it from there and like doing challenges and stuff like this. And very, very early, I had this like sew right through the finger, go to A&E moment in my sewing journey. And I think if I hadn't been engaged in the sewing community, that would have been it for me. I'd have been like, God, that was awful, wasn't it?
Never do that again.
Never do it again. Yeah. But then I was like, oh my God, I've got to go to the Stitch Festival. I really want to make some sewing friends. I want to do these challenges. And I felt like, even though I didn't know anyone at the time, I felt like I didn't want to let everyone down by just giving up so easy. So it really encouraged me.
I'm 90% sure we've pretty much followed each other from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because I remember you got to A&E with I remember you putting it on your stories, and I was like, oh my God. And then a few days later, I managed to put a needle all the way under my nail when I was trying to get something out, and then I put one through the side of my hand, and I was like, because I remember this vividly, because I was like, it's not just me. This happens to everybody. It's fine. But again, as you say, I would have been sat at home like, that's
me done.
Actually, so what you got your machine in 2019. What is your sewing story? Why did you start? Like, what drove you to get the machine?
So I originally bought the machine because we had pet rats.
I was going to say rat hammock.
It's a rat hammock. Yeah, I just like shared this on Instagram like this week. So probably a few people are like, "Are you the rat girl?" So yeah, I'm the rat girl. We had this cage for the rats, and it came with one hammock, but they would mess it and I'd have to wash it, and then they didn't have anywhere to sit. So I was like, I could get another one. And then I was looking, and there was boring ones, or there was like cute ones on Etsy, but they were really, really expensive. And I was like, you know what? I could probably make this. Like, I'd done sewing lessons at school, didn't enjoy them, but I was like, it's a rat hammock. Like, I got this. I don't know. I just really backed myself for the rat hammocks.
Solid, love that.
Doug and I went to Hobbycraft, and they were quite helpful there, to be honest.
What did they say when you were like, hey, I need to make a rat hammock? Were they phased?
Not really. Well, I was like, yeah, I'm going to make a rat hammock. I read that you can't have a woven fabric because they'll choke on it. And they're like, oh, we've got some fleece. This is going to be fine. I bought loads of it as well. So then I made all sorts. I made like a tube. I made like a cube, but that was really hard actually to make the cube. And then they ate it in like a day, and I was really annoyed. I was like, how ungrateful.
How dare they? Don't they recognise your effort that's gone into this? Outrageous.
And I also made this thing that was like a fleece like cover for this little platform in the cage that it was literally just designed to cover it. They weren't supposed to go in it, but in the night they'd bit a hole in it and like crawled in the bit that was like underneath, so they'd made it into a hammock. But when I went into the room in the morning, I looked in the cage and I was like, God, they've gone. Like, literally, how have they gone? And then I see these little faces like peeking out of this hole in the thing. I was like, all right, okay.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute though.
Do you still have?
No, unfortunately they passed away, but so we don't have any rats now. But that was my like starting point. So now I feel like anything I make's got a sort of rat memory on it, which is probably a bit random.
It's funny about rats, but actually my auntie always had rats when I was growing up, and they used to sit on her shoulder and go around in my cousin's pocket, and I think they're amazing pets. And a lot of people get a bit fun going, don't they? Yeah.
I mean, when I was a child, I had rabbits, and I would say that rats are much better pets than rabbits. They're much more intelligent.
Rats don't do very much.
And interactive.
So yeah, sorry to anyone who owns a rabbit. They're very sweet and fluffy, but they don't do anything really.
No, we
sort of potter about.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. And it's like hamsters just have to eat basically so that they don't eat their own faces because of the way their teeth go.
And they eat most of the day because they're nocturnal as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if this is because I've always grown up with multiple dogs, so that was like we always had 2 or 3 growing up, and they're all mad. But I do remember asking, one of my friends got a guinea pig, and I was like, oh, can I go see it? And my mom was like, yeah, I mean, if you want to. And we went round, and I'm so allergic to guinea pigs. I am like deathly allergic to guinea pigs. I was in there for like 30 seconds, and my whole face swelled up. My mom just like, nope, and took me away. But
are you allergic like cats or anything else?
Some cats and horses I am. I can still ride horses, I just have to be medicated to the 9s. And I have to wear gloves and everything. But yeah, no, like I'm allergic to cats and stuff, but like in a kind of cough sniffly way. But for some reason guinea pigs just can't go near them. Like, it's wild. I don't know, small fluffy things are very sweet, but I think rats are the kings of the small fluffy things, because they are clever and beautiful and like quite affectionate as well.
Yeah, they would, like, if you went to the cage, they'd come to see you, and probably because they wanted food, to be fair. But they were very cute.
My sister used to take hers on the bus in Edinburgh because she couldn't drive to take them to the vet.
Wow.
And they obviously won't let you take them on the bus if they can see, so they used to sit in her hood behind her, and she'd just be like, just stay there for like 6 stops, and then we'll get off the bus and it'll be fine.
Yeah, I would not have done that with ours. They were so active. They would have probably been running all about the bus, and everyone would be like, oh God.
What have we done? Oh my God. But that's such a crazy sewing journey to begin with. Like, I love hearing how people start sewing. I love it.
Because I think if I had started and been like, I'm going to sew my own wardrobe, that would have been like, I would have been just not done that. I would have been too much. And like, because I'm the sort of person that I can get easily like overwhelmed, and I would have been like, oh, sewing clothes. And then I'll be like, but then I'll have to measure myself and fit it. And I don't know what fabric to get and all this. And I've just never got round to it. So like doing like a little
project
square really like helped me like get started. And then from there I did, sort of basic stuff like cushion covers and tote bags and things like that. But yeah, then I used the Make It Simple book to do my first garments.
Okay.
And I went to the Stitch Festival, the one right before COVID. I think it was like February 2020.
Yeah, just before it kicked off.
Right before. And the only thing that they had was like a little thing on their website that was like, if you've just got back from China and you have a high fever,
what time,
please. And that was it. And it was rammed.
Oh my God.
And but anyway, I went on my own, and I hadn't really sewn like anything apart from rat rubbish, and I was so overwhelmed. I was like, what am I doing? And like everyone was there like, oh, are you wearing a My Soldier's dress? That's so good. Where'd you get the fabric? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, these people are speaking a different language, and I don't know what's happening. And now I'm like, this is my world. I love it here. So yeah, it's been like a real journey.
It definitely takes time, I think, particularly as you say, for the language and like the sort of, there's a lot of assumed knowledge with sewing. So there's a bit of an uphill climb, and then once you're there, you're laughing, you're fine. But it's learning those initial bits, I think, to feel like comfortable with what's happening, what's going on, what you have to do.
I thought it was quite interesting about that after you listened to our first episode, you said it was really interesting that Jess and I both came from what you deemed as creative backgrounds, and you didn't think you did.
Yeah, well, so my family like are not, because your family like sort of artists and costume designers and stuff like that, whereas my dad's an engineer, and my mum she originally worked in a bank, and then she didn't work when we were young, and then she was like a teaching assistant. But my mum's got this real block about creativity as well. She's like, I'm just not a creative person. I can't be doing creative things. But I think she could, like, now that she's like sort of semi-retired, she's sort of giving some stuff a go, which is really nice.
That's brilliant.
Quite interesting though, Yvette. My mum worked in a bank, and then my mum worked for C-Link, so my mum didn't have any kind of like job that was like in the creative industry. And my dad worked for a plumbing company that produced all the pipes. He was a technical engineer. So my dad made like a climbing frame out of down pipes for us, So,
I mean, that's creative.
But if you ask my mum and dad, they wouldn't. That's not how they would they would not categorize themselves as creative.
Oh, mine would be diving in. I have a very creative family, and for years I thought I wasn't in comparison.
Yeah,
because my parents are incredibly creative, and they are both, and so are my sisters, but they are fully aware that that is like their, I think because they've owned a business together for like coming up for 30 years, maybe over 30 years actually. I think they're a lot more aware of their strengths because they have to be.
And I think as well, and I don't know if you can relate to this, Jess, but like being a kid and being like academic and like doing well in school,
oh yeah,
then your family are like, great, pursue that, get some A's, go to university, do your thing, like, you know, beat boot, be a human in the real world, and then your creativity is sort of secondary to that because
Yvette, let me tell you, my dad refused to let me do a foundation art degree because he said it was a waste of a year. And I bucked the trend and I was like, right, my dad won't let me do a foundation art degree. How do I get around this? So I found a teaching degree that included an art degree with it. It was the way I could get around it.
I love that.
You know.
So really, your teaching degree was also just a kind of disguised art degree anyway.
It's not how my grandpa got a degree in dentistry.
I mean, I had to do a 4-year double degree. So for the first 2-3 years, I was doing an art degree and a teaching degree, and both of them behaved like yours. Their degree was the only one you were doing. So we were being asked to paint like 1 meter by 1.5 meter paintings and have them ready for in 2 weeks' time whilst I'm out on a teaching practice. You know?
Oh, God.
And then in the 4th year, you had to join them together. But yeah, it was a very bizarre scenario. I don't think they do them anymore like that.
I'll be honest, I'm not surprised. That sounds insane. Like, I get dual degrees because I was going to do a dual degree, but joining them together in your final year seems strange.
So I wrote a dissertation. I qualified to be a teacher in 1999, and I wrote a dissertation on the use of computers in art and the future of it, because at that time it was the future.
So did you predict the ChatGPT DALL-E AI art thing?
But it's interesting. A couple of months ago, I was trying to tidy up and I've still got it. And it was quite interesting reading back what I wrote 25 years ago and talking about how we'd have to view art differently because through using computers. And part of the dissertation, you had to do work with children because obviously it was a teaching degree and you had to look at how would it affect teaching and that sort of thing, and doing things, because at the time it was only that awful program on the computers, Paint. I don't know if you remember it.
Oh yeah.
Just like horrendous. And trying to, like, you know, come up with like where I thought this would go and where we would teach it, you know. And I have to say, I'm not sure it's, you know, and someone might disagree with me, and I'd love people to put that in the comments, but I'm not sure that the use of computers has gone a huge distance further in schools. Because I've only been out of working in a school for a year and a half now, and I don't think we've really seen it used in an incredibly creative way to allow other people to realise that they can be creative if you can't draw or paint.
Do you think that's due to lack of resources, though, because the schools just don't have like a computer for every kid in
Definitely
the art
not. I mean, you know, schools have got plenty of suites of iPads and things. I think it's a lack of perception of what teaching art and teaching the arts really is in school. I think it's still very trapped. If you look at the national curriculum today, it's still very trapped in something that hasn't really evolved since I started teaching. And you know, it distresses me when I walk into a school and see a wall full of replications of like Van Gogh's sunflowers. Van Gogh painted hundreds and hundreds of paintings before he reached the point of painting. And he didn't even paint one painting of the sunflowers. He painted a whole range of them. Yet we're asking 8-year-olds to replicate that. What does that say about creativity to people?
And also, I think trying to replicate something, especially something by a long-term talented artist, you're setting these kids up to fail, and then they're like, I'm not good at art.
Or you're saying,
it's a bit like asking a new sewist, here's a Chanel suit, go and replicate it.
But it is really interesting, actually, the definition as well of what we tell people is creative. Like, you're not good at this, ergo you're not creative, which isn't true. It's just you didn't excel in this specific area, but being creative, I would argue, is more of a mindset than anything. But going back,
I was going to bring it back to stashes and talk about like maybe this sort of sense of having your creativity repressed through your childhood, if that's something you did experience, and now people, like, they've got permission to do what they want, they've got their own disposable income, so then, like, they're like, all right, great, let's go crazy, and then they'll buy anything, and then it becomes overwhelming. So I wonder whether sort of psychology plays in like that.
I think there's that, but I also would argue that because potentially, sorry, I've been writing all day, so forgive me if my speech is somewhat stilted. I'm still an essay brain. But I would argue that if you think you're not creative and you're consistently told you're not creative, you're not exercising creative choice very often. So when you're looking at fabrics, you're going, oh my God, I could get all these things, but you're still not necessarily going, oh, I could make this with them, or I could do that. Or I think that takes a bit of time, and almost, I think it's something I'm trying to do this year, but also I would encourage everyone to do it, is when you're sitting down, if you see a fabric you fall in love with, and we all do it, you see a fabric and you go, oh my God, I would encourage taking a second to write it down or think about it and just go, why do I like it? What's drawing me to it? I love abstract monochrome patterns. Like, my wardrobe is done by color, and there is a section that is just like black and white abstract, because I love it. And I've discovered I like it because I feel like I like the way it makes me feel. I like the way it makes me look. I also like the fact it doesn't make me look gendered. I'm not covered in pink flowers. And there's nothing wrong with being that. But sometimes it's nice to go, I just want to embrace this, or I want to embrace that. But like, I think if you're not getting the chance to be creative regularly, or you perceive that you're not, it's almost harder sometimes to go, when you look at a fabric and go, oh, what could I make with that if the idea's gone? Does that make any sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
Totally. And I think the difference between I love it, and it's for me, they're not the same thing.
Yes.
And I think that's what, like, when I'm doing the in-person socials and people are chatting, a lot of people saying, I'm now putting it in my basket and I'm thinking about it for 24 hours. Yeah. Because I think you spoke about this in when you were talking about letting go of your stash, Yvette, saying there will always be more fabric.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that we've like recently introduced to Stash Hub is a wish list feature. So if you see things that you really like, you can put them in your Stash Hub, see them there in the context of your whole stash, but you don't have to buy it like right away. Like, you can go back for it. Like, it gives you a chance to think about it. Or then you can also use it to like plan a project. So we've also got a new thing in projects, which is like just an idea, so that your actual like list of in progress projects, or however you choose to use it, isn't like clogged with loads of ideas. No. You don't feel like, oh God, now I've got like 80 projects I need to work on. You can just put everything in the just an idea folder, and it's there, but you don't have to face it every day.
I used that yesterday because there's an idea I've had for ages, and I was like, I need to write this down, but I don't want the pressure of committing and going, this is what I will do. But I was like, I'm just going to throw it in there. And now it sort of feels more doable if I did want to do it.
Yeah.
So I look at it and go, do you know what? I actually have the notions for this. And I have the fabric and I have the pattern. I could just see how we go, see if we fancy it. But I love that. And I love giving sewists the opportunity to window shop.
Yeah.
And to think about what you want. Like, I love buying fabric online because I'm aware of how much I'm spending. I never come away, well, generally I don't come away from fabric shopping online going, oh, I shouldn't have spent that. I normally do in person.
I don't agree with that, Jess, for me.
So in person, I think it's harder to see how much something is per metre. So you fall in love with something, whereas I filter by price. And I go, nope, not spending 15 quid a metre today. Thank you.
Also, I think online there's like more information as well, so you can like consider it more. But I think sometimes it's actually a braver decision to choose not to buy something. Because if you buy it, you have it in your stash and you can either use it or not use it. But if you don't buy it, you don't have it. And so to say to yourself, well, I don't need this, there's going to be another fabric similar to this, or another fabric I like just as much in the future, I think it's more of a risk sometimes. So I think you do have to be like mindful about what you buy, so that you do get a stash that like brings you joy and inspiration.
I completely agree with that.
And I wonder, going back to the creativity bit, I wonder if people's stashes over time go through an evolution as they become more comfortable with their own creativity or with their own like self-realization. Because buying a fabric that, like we said at the beginning, that you won't sew because, like Jess said, with linen, it's too itchy, or for me, I'm a woman of a certain age, it will just make me sweat, you know. Yeah, is a realization that you have to come to terms with it as yourself as a person. And like you were saying, Yvette, sometimes like even just measuring yourself is a very confronting thing, I find, when I'm like choosing a pattern. And, you know, so that's sometimes why I sew with jersey, because there's less measuring. But I think that I wonder if people, when they're in that place of they're not fully like ready for that, their stash is more just, oh, I can't bear to not have it, or it's too gorgeous. And then it evolves into a place like Jess is talking about of, can I use this for multiple things? Does it really fit with the things that I love? As opposed, like you say to Yvette, there'll always be more fabric. I'd be really interested in if people have noticed that in their own stash journey.
Definitely. Have you found your stash has changed, Yvette, since starting Stash Hub?
I definitely am much more aware of it now. I wouldn't say that it's smaller or anything like that, because I'm still like buying fabric. I find that like a fabric ban is not enjoyable for me, because I feel like that can feel like a restriction on my creativity. If I see something, have a great idea for it, and then feel like I'm not allowed it, that's really frustrating for me. But I've always, like, ever since I first started sewing, I've always tried to keep like a handle on what I've got. Like originally, before I even had Trello, I had this Word document, which was dreadful. If anyone's ever tried to put a picture in a Word document, you're not having a good time.
That's just awful.
I don't know why I decided I would even do that, honestly. But I wanted to keep the information as well, because I was new to sewing. And because it was the pandemic, I was buying things online, and that information was right there, like for me. So I wanted somewhere to keep it. But now I can keep it in Stash Hub, and it's much more convenient, and I can filter it and everything. So yeah, I'm much more aware of my stash, and I think my actual fabric choices have changed over time as well. I'm trying like not to buy like cheap and like poor quality fabric, because at the start I was like, well, I want to make a wearable toile. I want to make a version of this with a cheap fabric. But then if it didn't work out, I wouldn't use the nice fabric, because I felt like, oh, I can't use it for that project, and I'll have to go back and get another cheap fabric to try a different pattern. And I just got in a cycle of making things that weren't very nice and didn't fit very well, because I personally am an advocate of a quick and dirty, non-wearable toile. Scraps. Like, it's a good way to use up scraps as well, and then you can make it and you can cut it. You can be like, my boobs don't fit in here, snip, snip, and then they stretch it out to where it's supposed to be. You put that amount of paper in.
Fully agree with this.
And I think it speeds up the toiling process, because you don't have to make like 10 wearable toiles that you could wear but they don't really work.
Honestly, life is too short. So I toile very few things. It depends on the pattern company. So if I've never used the pattern before, I might just toile the bust. If I'm like, the rest of it will be fine, but I'll just toile this. But I toile very little, because honestly, by the time I've made it in a toile, I really can't be bothered to make the actual thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
fine.
say that. Yeah. Yeah. So, do you know what? I'm going to edit this into a funny bit where I just say, Jess, you told
Can we
us
do it
this.
as an outtake, please? But you might have to bleep me. I can't remember what I just said.
That's right. No.
Like, Jess is really strong on the anti-toile agenda.
Well, yeah, Jess and I massively differ on the anti-toile agenda. Yeah. But you know what, Yvette? I think it would be really interesting, like, to create like a hashtag or something on Instagram of people showing, like you're saying, the getting down and dirty and doing like a really like sort of messy toile with bits of fabric. Because, well, you know, although people are trying to share their mistakes and things like that, we don't really ever show that really behind the scenes bit very often, do we? Still, with, you know, people are trying, but it's not the bit that we see, I think.
Oh, there's still the pretty mistakes. You still see the mistakes that are like, oh, I've got a hole in a thing, but the rest of it looks beautiful. Whereas sometimes I'm like, you need to look at the inside of my garments, mate. They are a mess.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder whether the like people not sharing the toiling isn't just to do with it like not being aesthetic. It's all because it's also like to post a photo of your body when stuff doesn't fit can be quite like anxiety inducing, especially if you've got a negative relationship.
Definitely. That's a good point.
Like on a hanger, I agree with you. We don't want anyone being,
no one should feel uncomfortable.
No, definitely not. But even if it's hanging on a hanger or like over the mannequin or whatever people have got, I think it would be great for people to share some of those pictures, I think. And if anyone wanted to, we would happily put like a little stories together, because I think particularly when people are starting out in sewing, because all we see, we often see a lot of great finished products that can create a huge amount of pressure at the beginning and not realise that behind the scenes people are snipping up an old duvet and slashing it when your boobs or whatever don't fit,
I had probably got a few pictures I can dig out from when I started sewing.
Yeah, should we make like a terrible Twirl Tuesday or something?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, that's way better than Taco Tuesday, terrible Twirl Tuesday, yeah.
We can still do tacos as well for like recovery afterwards.
Yes.
Tacos to deal with my terrible twirls. When I first started sewing, I had the Great British Sewing Bee books, and they were like the only patterns I had because I'd been bought them by my grandma. And I was like, great, they're handy, they're a good starting place, I would say. But I made a jumpsuit out of one of them. And it was one of the worst fitting things that has ever graced my body at any point ever. Like, sometimes we just go, well, this is unsalvageable and I will never make this again. And we will just never speak of this ever again.
I feel like that's the beginner confidence right there as well, to be like, I'm going to do jumpsuit. Because like after a few years of experience, you're like, trouser fitting and it's an all-in-one. So I've got to do boobs and bum, crotch height, bodice length. That's everything. That's everything. You can't. Man.
I don't know what I was thinking. However, recommendation, if anyone wants a very forgiving beginner jumpsuit pattern, Nina Lee Carmel jumpsuit. Cannot recommend something enough.
To make that.
That's still on my list as well, yeah.
I think we just didn't have any summer like at all last year, and I just couldn't.
Oh my God. So I have one in silver plissé, and I love it. I feel like I'm in ABBA and I love it. It's brilliant. I made it as a collab with Aria Textiles, and bless them, they were like, choose a fabric and like share photos. I think I blogged about it maybe, but it's one of those sort of collabs. And I think they thought I was going to choose something sensible. And I did not. I was like, I'm going to do this in plissé. Now that jumpsuit is meant to be worn woven, like it's meant to be made woven. So again, top tip is I just stuck some elastic in the waist and it was fine, because I needed, plissé is a bit awkward.
Yeah, it's a bit awkward. Yeah.
But no, it's a really forgiving jumpsuit pattern. So throwing a recommendation out there. Now, I have just looked at the time, so I'm
just going to say, teacher voice is coming out. It's dilemma time.
Exactly, I've got one here, ready to go. So, if anyone hasn't listened before, I put a question box up every couple of weeks so that you guys get a bit of a chance to think about them, to ask for your sewing dilemmas or sewing fails, and then we share what we get. It will always be anonymous, always. And you can share, they can be sewing related. They can also be non-sewing related, guys. Just throw what you want in there. And you can always email us as well if they don't fit in the question box or they're massive and don't fit in DMs. So you can email us at sewnewbiscuit@gmail.com. So today's dilemma, folks, are we ready?
We're ready.
It's very suitable for January because I assume everyone's just spent December doing this. How do you politely say no when people ask you to make them things? Yvette, thoughts?
Well, I think it depends on what they ask you to do as well, because sometimes if they're like, can you make me a wedding dress? You can be like, no, I can't make a wedding dress.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, or you can just be like, I'm sorry, I don't have capacity to do that. Or just be like, sewing is my hobby.
I'm going to say, Yvette, do you get asked to make things for people?
Not a lot, honestly, but when I bought my new sewing machine, Doug was very generously carrying the big box down the road because we don't have a car. So he's walking down the road with this big, massive box, and it's the sewing machine box. You can see that it's a sewing machine in it. We're just walking. We're nearly home. this random woman on the street is like, oh my God, is that a sewing machine? I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh, so you sew then? I'm like, well, yeah. She's like, oh, you make me some clothes? I was like, no, I just sew for myself. It's a hobby. She's like, I'll give you good money.
Oh my God.
So listen, lady, like I said no. Why are you being so aggressive? Like,
and also, who are you?
Yeah, it was so awkward. Honestly, I was like, what's happening right now? Doug's standing in the road with this giant box. His arms are about to fall off. I'm just like...
Also, can I just circle back? You're carrying a sewing machine. Do you sew? No, mate, I'm taking it for a walk. What do you think? I've just got a sewing machine.
It was literally one of the worst exchanges I've ever had.
I'm
and I
so
was just
sorry.
Like,
that's
I
insane.
don't know what to say.
It's so weird the way certain things prompt people to think they can just say stuff. It's like babies, sewing. There's a few things, isn't there, that people think they can just just interject into. Jess, do you get asked very often by other people?
All the time, and it depends who it is. I get asked by my friends and my siblings, and I just go, no, I'm not doing that. I love you very much, but no. I've been asked at work.
Have you?
Oh yes. One, I won't name this person because I do technically still work there. But someone did once ask me, like, oh, you sew, right? I was like, well, yes, because me and my team, I'd come in, my outfit was fully me made. So we were kind of having a chat, some of them on Instagram. And this other guy from a completely different team goes, oh, okay, so you sew? And I'm like, yeah, you got ears, well done. And he goes, can you sew my buttons back on for me? And I was like, depends, mate. Do you want to do my ironing? Like, I'm not doing your chores for you. Learn. And I probably could have replied more professionally, but
yeah,
no,
I think that's fair. Like, and also it depends, like, who it is in terms of like, would they actually appreciate it as well? Because like with the sewing on the buttons, the only person I'll do that for is my granddad, because he he asks so nicely and he really, really appreciates it. And anyone else, they'd be like, oh, whatever, it's just a button. So, well, do it yourself then.
Yeah,
Like,
I do it for Adam. And I've sewn jeans up for Adam before, because as you say, he comes and he goes, I know you're really busy. There is no rush. Do you have 5 minutes at any point to do this? And I'll have a look at it and be like, no, sorry, babe, they're gone. Like, I don't know what you've done, but they're gone. Or, I don't know how men wear clothes sometimes. You look at it, how have you done this?
Like, sorry, Adam, but you're going to have
part of the jeans wear out on men, always.
I don't understand. They need to reinforce them. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. But, sometimes I'm like, thank you very much for asking. Whereas I don't respond as well to the, can you just do this for me? And I'm like, no. Yeah. But like, I'm making my bridesmaids dresses, but I offered. I basically said, I'm going to make them so you guys don't have to buy them. And I'm going to pay for the fabric. They can, if they'd like to contribute, they can. But I know being a bridesmaid can be stressful. And I don't want people to have to be forced into this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wanted it to be a nice experience. So I'm doing that for them. But that's pretty much the only thing I will ever make for them that's that size. Like, I might make a bag or something for them in the future, but
I think that would be my first piece of advice to the person who's asked is, before you say anything, will the person be genuinely grateful?
Yes.
Before you even go any further, because unless it's some random person in the street, you should know the person well enough to know if they're going to be grateful. And then, my team lead actually at work, she loved one of my dresses and asked me if I'd sew her one. And I said, well, you're going to have to choose what fabric you want. And I actually wouldn't mind for her, because I know she would be endlessly grateful, endlessly accommodating about it, and over the moon about it. And I would enjoy it because I know she would get joy out of me doing it for her. But for other people, it would be a flat no, because I wouldn't enjoy it and they wouldn't be that grateful.
It's stressful sewing for other people.
Yeah,
it is.
And she would be realistic. If I said to her, look, I'm going to, you realize I'm going to have to measure you and things. I have the kind of relationship with her where she would know that what she was taking on, I was being upfront with her. But there's a whole Instagram thread on this called Can You Sewing?
I love Can You Sew This For Me?
Some people get such ungrateful reactions. I think the first thing to think is, and if you don't know how someone will behave, then definitely not, because you do not want to enter into this interaction with someone if you don't know how they're going to be at the end of it. Because I think it's a bit like lending someone money. It could genuinely break a friendship or something.
Yeah, it absolutely can. The second bit of advice following on from that very good point that I would give is, consider if it's somebody, if you don't want to sew it for them, like if they've asked and you just don't want to do it, there are two paths you can go down. You can just be like, no, as Yvette said, like, my sewing's for me, I don't sew for other people, like I'm not really comfortable doing that. If you get one of those people who's really pushy, I think sometimes it's a really good idea to explain how much of the process they still have to do. I've used this before where you go, well, it's not just going to appear, you have to choose the fabric, and you'll have to get it, and then I'm going to have to measure you, and then I'm going to have to fit it to you. This is not a quick job. You are not just going to have a dress overnight. And I don't feel like that is something that you can always downplay your own skill level. You might be a couturier, but you can still be like, I don't think that's necessarily something I'll be able to do. But if you make it sound like a massive hassle, most people go, oh God. Like
when you tell people how expensive fabric is, that probably puts them off as well. If they're used to shopping fast fashion and you're like, well, it's going to take you 6 weeks and you're going to have to pay 80 quid for the fabric, they'll be like, oh God.
Exactly.
But also I think this person's asked this question because they don't want to sew whatever it is. I think so, And just don't be afraid to say no. You don't even have to give a reason or make the whole thing seem unappealing. Just be like, no, thank you. I don't need any more sewing projects. Goodbye.
Yeah. And just say, I'm sorry, I'm too busy, or I don't have any room to do that right now. I saw a really great quote. Instead of I'm too busy, it was like, my life is full right now, or I'm full or something. I thought it was a really nice way to put it. Yeah.
Well, also, sometimes you're like, I'm not too busy, I just don't want to. And in those instances, it's totally fine. If you don't like the person, crack on and say that. But if you do like them, it's totally fine to go, I'm really sorry, sewing's my hobby. It's my way of relaxing. And I find it really stressful sewing for other people, so I don't do it. Like, it's your hobby, it's your space. There is 100% a culture of everyone seeing your hobby and going, you could make money out of that. You don't.
Oh, I get that. That's the thing I get so much. People at work again, you're wasted here, you can make money out of this. I'm like, people will not pay what I would need to charge to buy this.
I also don't want to. Like, there's that side of thing where you go, you have no idea how expensive this would be. But also, what's wrong with just doing something for fun?
Yes.
And
I wouldn't turn everything into a money-making machine.
I wouldn't worry about like offending the person that's asked as well. Like, as long as you're polite, it's not your problem if they're upset that you won't sew them something, because you don't owe them that. You can just say no thank you, and then it's that's it, you're done. Like, you don't have to do something to please somebody else. Like, if that's not going to bring you joy,
you're demonstrating your hobnob strength.
I know it's getting crunchy out here, but I just think this person, like, you've got to be reassured, like, you have to protect your personal time and like what brings you joy. And if it's not sewing some random thing for a person you don't really know, don't do it.
Exactly. And even if you're being, I have a few people in my life who can be pushy without realizing they're being pushy. They're very lovely, but it's their way of not necessarily interpreting. Like, if you're too polite, some people can think of it as shyness of you saying, oh, I'm not really good enough. Whereas actually, as Yvette said, if you just go, do you know what? Like, actually, I don't want to. You're polite, but you say, I just don't want to do it. If you're upfront, you're probably going to save the relationship a bit more as well by just going, look, I don't want to do this, rather than doing that incredibly precious thing and going, oh, maybe, sometime, possibly, and then just avoiding the conversation for the next 10 years.
And if we get too tangled up in how people respond, you know what? Some people will respond however carefully you put it to them in a negative way, and that's on them,
Yeah, we can't be responsible for other people's feelings for this kind of stuff, but also perceptions of our hobby. Because people who don't get it.
Say to kids, if you ask a question, you have to be prepared for whatever the answer is. If you ask the question. But some people are not. Some people ask a question with an expectation on what the answer is going to be, don't they?
I like it when people phrase things as questions when they clearly don't mean it as a question, but it gives you a great opportunity to nope. And then they can't really, because they've asked it as a question. Sorry, lads. Like, it's always used to be my favorite, where at one of my old jobs I used to have a manager who used to go, do you feel like maybe doing this today? And I'd be like, not really, actually, I've kind of got this on. And it's liberating as I love it.
It's just opening it up. It's giving you the opportunity to decline, like, asking for it.
Exactly. But no, we fully support you saying no. If you don't follow Can You Sew This For Me, go and follow it, because it will give you a much needed confidence boost if you're struggling. Plus, you can see the pure brass neck of some people in Facebook groups.
Yeah. And a reality check of how ungrateful some people can be, however hard you try.
Or the people who are like, hey, I'm going to a thing tomorrow and I need a full cosplay costume. Can someone do this for like 15 quid? And you're like, no.
Like, can someone? Maybe. Me? Absolutely not.
People keep giving me this advice for my wedding dress. People keep going, you're going to need more time than you think you are. And I was like, I'll be honest, mate, I've got the time I've got. So
yeah, where am I getting this bonus time from?
It's very kind and I know what they mean, but also I'm like, that's not the helpful nugget of advice you think it is.
Yeah. But also that's suggesting like that you're going to leave it to the last minute. And I feel like you're already on it. Like you're trying on like in a week. You've got your plan. Like, God, let me get on with it, people.
You know the number of people who keep going, because we're going to get married in November this year, and it's not quite booked yet, but we're like nearly there. And the number of people who are like, 11 months? You can't get married in 11 months? I'm like, firstly, I absolutely can. Secondly, I've been an event manager for 10 years, so again, probably can. And thirdly, what do you need to do in the remaining year? Like, just mentally prepare? Like, what? Like, Yvette, you're married, aren't you?
Yeah. So
how long did you have?
I was engaged for like around 18 months because I got engaged at Christmas, but I wanted to get married in the summer. So I thought 6 months, bit of a short turnaround. So then, basically there was the start where you book everything. Then it was dead for like a year. Then it's like the end bit where you've got to, get your dress, get everything, all the little bits sorted out. So yeah, I feel like 11 months is fine. And you've got the skills as well. You've got this.
Oh my God, don't.
I mean, Jess, I've been married twice and both times I organised most of it and did both of them in less than a year.
That makes me feel better. Yeah. Like,
I mean, I even taught myself how to make rose petal decorations for the top of a cake and did that a week before.
Because you didn't have enough on.
Yeah. I think the thing is we can always fill time with extra things if we want to, but it's whether we really want to is the question.
Exactly. And I've now got anyone listening who's heard me give you the previous total and say I'm not sewing anything else, please close your ears. So I'm now up to 3 wedding dresses and then 4 bridesmaids dresses, 3 groomsmen ties and Adam's shirt. And I think that's now it. I feel
like you can just spend the whole day getting changed. Be like, don't change.
We're getting legally married a few days before, so I'm making something casual and white for that because that will just be us and 2 witnesses. So I'm making something I can reuse as like a summer dress. I'm making actually, if anyone wants to see the pattern, the Amy Winwood watermelon dress, which is beautiful, and it's sort of princessy but floaty and sort of, if I make it like a white linen viscose mix, which I am fine with because it's nice and soft. I'm going to make that, and then and then I'm having a full change. I'm doing the giant white, like cloudy paillette sequins for my evening dress, like the really big ones, so it'll move when I move. So that's really the bit I'm stressing about, not the couture gown construction for the main bit. I'm just stressing about sewing on sequins.
Because also you're obviously going to learn how to like do the salsa as well, so that you can like get the shimmy, so you've got to put in time for that as well.
Can I explain how horrified Adam would be if I was suddenly like telling myself thing? I think he would literally die of like embarrassment.
You could do like they do in America where the brides do a dance and the groom sits in the chair.
My heart is cringing. Worse.
That's just so weird when I see that.
I can't. Like, all power to you if you have the confidence, your groom has the confidence, and you like your family, like your whole family and friends enough.
I know. Some of them are pretty intense, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like for my wedding, we hadn't even considered the first dance until like the night before when someone was like, what are you doing for your first dance? We were like, oh, better pick a song, I guess.
That's what we are.
That's exactly. Wedding number 1, I did that. Wedding number 2, we didn't even have a first dance because we had the event like after the registry office at a pub. And my second husband was too shy. He's not my husband anymore, but he was too shy. It wasn't right for him,
Which is fair. We went to a wedding in the summer where they had a first song. Because they both went, we're not dancing in front of you. We don't like dancing. So they played and sang a song together, which was adorable. And like very on brand for the wedding. It looked so cute.
Yeah.
But like, I just went, that's so personal and beautiful. But yes, sorry, we've gone very off topic. But
Thank you so
Yvette,
much,
it
Yvette.
has been a joy. Thank you so
I've
much.
had excellent fun. I'm not sure how much we talked about stashes, but I can always come back on and we'll do that episode another time.
Well, Yvette, we're really hoping that this keeps going well. We've had great response already. We've sort of mostly not fully planned season 2, but we'd definitely love to have you back. We're really hoping everyone, and we're also hoping that maybe people enjoy it so much we can do mini ones in between, maybe not, in the future. So you could always come back for a mini one as well.
Yeah.
If you'd like to see that, let us know, guys, if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, we was thinking maybe every 2 weeks a full one and then in a mini one in between to keep everybody going.
Yeah, I just love this episode. This has been so fun. This has been we have to have you back. This has been great.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe and rate us if your podcast app allows. It really helps us to make sure we're reaching as many sewers as possible, and give us a follow. So What's New Pod on Instagram, and we have a Facebook community group that you can join as well. Link is in our Instagram bio as well. Thank you so much for listening. I was going to say watching there. Thank you so much for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, and please remember to tell everyone else about us. Thank you, everybody.
Hooray! Right, now you can stop recording. We have to.